This help video is designed to help you understand the strengths wheel. The strengths wheel is designed to plot a team. It's really not designed for individual use. Now we will talk a little bit about what it means if an individual plots at certain places of the wheel, but really it's designed to establish a picture of the team's makeup. Once the team picture is established, the strengths wheel can drive a discussion. The discussion will lead us into three different specific areas. What are our team's strengths? What are our team gaps? In other words, what are we missing? What potentially is a weakness? And then should we take any action based on what we've learned? Those are the three primary goals of the interactive activities around the strengths wheel. The strengths wheel, I'm going to try and explain it in a couple of different ways. The first is that the strengths wheel is actually divided east and west, and it's also divided north and south. So by taking a look at the wheel, it actually forms 4 large pies divided into 8 smaller pies, and we'll talk a little bit about what each of those mean. The first thing I want to talk about is this north-south division. If we take a look at an individual or a group of people that plot on the north side of the wheel, in other words, beavers and lions have something in common, they're task-oriented. So anything that plots in this area, whether it be in the B area or the L area or analytical, implementer, conductor, these people carry something in common. They are task-oriented. On the other side of the wheel, golden retrievers and otters have something in common as well. In other words, supporter, relators, promoters, they're people-oriented. Once again, understanding this about a team is very important. Is it more on task or is it more focused on people? The next thing we'll take a look at is the wheel's divided into that east-west quadrant as well. Beavers and golden retrievers have something in common as well. They tend to be more slower paced. Now I'm not talking slower cognitively, I'm simply talking they tend to take a step back before they take a step forward. Why? Because they're supporters, coordinators, analyzers. Lions and otters have something in common as well. In other words, conductors, persuaders, promoters, they are faster paced. So very easily we can plot a team out on the wheel and start getting an understanding whether they're task-oriented, people-oriented, whether they're task fast, task slow, people fast, things of that nature. We look at the cluster. Remember, this is a picture of the team. The next thing that I want you to understand is why we place the numbers on the wheels. People always ask this question, so we'll try and deal with it. Starting up here in the top right corner in the conductor area, you're going to see the numeric 1. And from the 1, we simply move down the wheel to 2 in the persuader, 3, moving clockwise, 4, 5, and now watch this. We just continue around the wheel, dropping in at the number 9 until we get to 60. It's that simple. Each part of the wheel represents a numeric number. There's only 60 statistical plot points. So think about it. Every person gets a natural and an adapted style. So let's say this person plots a 12 and I'm on the telephone with them. I can easily understand, hey, they're in the 12 quadrant, which means that they're a persuader. Their adapted's also in the 12 quadrant, so I can see that this individual is basically a round peg in a round hole. Or, like we talk sometimes, it's my way or the highway. We have to explore those things we don't know. Once again, really not designed for individual use, but it can tell us that this individual is probably empowered to use their natural God-given strengths. But let's say that this person was actually a 22, an analyzer. We would see the point actually start over here at the analyzer quadrant, and we would then look at the distance between where their core style is, or their natural, and their adapted, or their strengths movement. So natural strengths versus strengths movement. This person is normally slower paced, task-oriented, but moving to task-oriented, faster paced. The difference or the distance between those 2 points we know takes energy to move there. Think about that for a moment. I'm task oriented, but now I got to speed up dramatically. Look at the difference between those 2 points. Let's say that this individual actually started out at a 10. So the point started here on the scale. And then we took a look at the difference between where they are on the scale being a conductor, simply moving to a persuader. This takes far less energy in order for the individual to accomplish. Why? Because they're still in that same pie. They're task-oriented, people-oriented, task-oriented, fast-paced. They're just simply shifting a little bit away from task towards people, but they're still very fast-paced. They're in the outer rings of the wheel. So, why the different rings? That's the natural question. You'll notice there's 5 rings on the wheel, starting in the center, progressing out until you actually reach the outside of the Strengths wheel. Each one of these rings tells us a little different story. So let's say that an individual plotted in the center of the ring versus the outside of the ring. If the individual plots in these 2 inner circles, okay, what we call the 2 inner circles, these people are what we call flexible. In other words, they have multiple strengths operating at the same time. If they plot in the outer 2 circles, we call these people rigid. In other words, you'll see more rigidity in their behavior. In other words, conduct, conduct, conduct. There's really no other influences. The further you move out on the wheel, the more rigid. The further that you move to the inside of the wheel, the more flexible, until you get to the center of the wheel. There are 4 places that you can plot in the center of the wheel. This is basically a 57, 58, 59, and 60. And these are what we call cross patterns and they actually tend to conflict with each other. So let me just explain that minorly. Once again, this is a team exercise. We don't want to really be doing this from an individual perspective, but people always ask this question when we get in a cross or a flexible on the wheel, so we're going to talk about it just for a moment. In order to get into these 4 quadrants in the center, once again, you have to have some type of conflict. In other words, if you're here, you actually have an aggressive strength as well as a predictable strength, and those 2 things don't play well together. In other words, I got to get it done now, but I got to do that in a very amiable way. I need to do that in a very predictable way. And normally, aggressive people are a lot more impulsive than predictable. Do you see the conflict? Once again, if you're an individual that falls in that particular category, it just simply says that there's this little voice inside of you that says, get it done now, but it needs to be done in a very predictable way. And those 2 things can be at odds. It's not bad, it's not good, it just is. Once again, we're all fearfully and wonderfully made, and we have a very unique set of strengths to bring to our team. If you fall here, it means that this person's optimistic and structured. If you just think about that for a moment, an individual that's optimistic, okay, let's have some fun, and on the other side's going, well, but it's got to be structured. It's got to be serious. Those 2 things are at odds with each other. And simply when we move to this quadrant, the structure moves in front of the optimism, and when we move to this quadrant, the predictable moves in front of the aggressive, but they're still the same conflict. They're just on different sides of the wheel, thus slower versus faster, task versus people. So that's it. That's how you simply read the wheel, the numeric scores, and why the different circles on the wheel.